Now we're going to go into the medical findings behind toxic behavior and how it destroys companies through their health. And I have Sheree Peterson here with me to field questions. Dr. Robert Sapolsky, famed neuroendocrinologist, has done extensive research in the field of emotional and mental distress and its effects on the brain and body. I could just kiss this man. His information ties into this perfectly. He didn't tie it necessarily into toxic people because his research was mostly on stress, but he did in his stories tie it into toxic events with parents or just anybody, bosses, whatever, which I loved. So it's perfect because my information just ties right into his. He found consistent and chronic psychological stress starts to stunt, diminish, and destroy mental and emotional capacities within the brain and physical health of the body. Toxic people create chronic stress in the people around them to varying degrees. Some people are more susceptible to physical, emotional, and mental ailments when taken to the brink of their body and mind's individual healing and coping abilities. When people suffer too long and too often, psychologically, they are being set up to get sick. And we're going to explain why, the mechanics of it. People who ruminate and worry on stressors, even when they are not happening, are more likely to have damaging emotional hormone dumping when they should be relaxing. And we're going to talk about how to overcome that. If you're in a toxic situation and there's nothing you can really do about it, I have some tips for you to be able to combat that. The gland system that is consistently dumping neurochemicals into the brain and body can then damage the hypothalamus in the brain, leading to problems with growth hormones, insulin, and reproduction. Women are more susceptible due to their sympathetic system not only being aroused by their own stressors, but by those they care about and for. There are other responses in the body to toxic people and stress which can induce heart disease, decreased flow of blood to parts of the body, high blood pressure, sticky blood, which can damage kidneys and blood flow, chronic hypertension, clogged arteries, gastrointestinal tract problems, heart attack, etc. Now this can be found, we're going to talk about later, also in the toxic person. Not necessarily the mood parts of it, well, the negative mood, but not, some of them have depression and anxiety themselves, but mostly they're just causing it in other people. If pregnant, the consequences of chronic psychological distress on the fetus are just as damaging as they are to the mother due to the shared circulatory system. The amount of hormones and nutrients being dumped into or depleted from the mother's bloodstream is the same as the fetus. This has been found to develop and condition the body and brain of the fetus to certain weaknesses and disorders before it has even been born, which has been shown to perpetuate itself in the generations that follow if not rectified. Anxiety levels are higher in children who have mothers who are toxic or who have trouble being emotionally nurturing and are detached.
Okay, now you know, Christy knows that I have a mother who is the same way, and I've gone through this as well. And one of the things that was hard for me to assess when I was an adult was that I was actually suffering from anxiety, and the cause of that was because of the stress of growing up in an environment where my mother was toxic.
Right.
So you're going to be getting into some solutions for how to handle this, yes? Okay,
yes,
good.
and how it works and why you can't ruminate and you have to, when you're away from that toxic person, you need to have the tools, and it'll take some practice if you're used to constantly having that chemical dump even when you're not in the stressor.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Consistent isolation, emotional vacuums, and minimal communication are silent forms of toxic behavior that also make individuals sick, in extreme cases leading to death. War zones, stressful family dynamics, and highly physical and mentally abusive moments are also extremely damaging, especially being ignored. Very, very bad. And we're going to go into why that, if you're sick, especially with cancer, why toxic people can make it so that you pass away Okay, and you need to be able to take the steps to make sure that that doesn't happen. Maybe in the people you know that you're going to see this in, and help them. Toxic people can cause distress in others that lead to bone disease, the inability to heal, with isolation and rejection having the power to kill. Now, this is an interesting story on the bottom. This is a man who was about to die in a hospital. And he had, I guess, no family members. Nobody was visiting him. I'm not sure if he was a homeless man or not, or just kind of indigent. But it's a sweetheart of a man. I watched the video on him, if you want to find it. It's just really sweet. So he is ready to pass away. They don't think he's going to make it. His dog is in a kennel because there's nobody to take care of it. And the dog stops eating.
Oh.
And so it's suffering, right? And so finally, because his life's on the line, somebody maneuvers this miracle where they say, let's get the dog in here. I don't care if you have a rule against dogs. We are getting this dog in here to see if it'll save this man. And so this dog comes in, and this is I'm getting the chills from him. Start crying. Anyway, this dog comes in, and it's just the sweetest thing. It's just, you know, and he's talking to the dog. The man survives. They start bringing the dog to him for visits. The dog starts improving. He starts improving. Okay. Now, this is between a dog and a person. People need to be like this to each other.
Absolutely.
So that people will survive the illnesses that they are in. Chronic stress wreaks havoc on the immune system. We have 17 different kinds of immune cells which fight specific pathogens in the body. Stress affects this system by activating it when it doesn't need to. Anxiety can turn it on so much that your body overreacts over and over again until it develops an autoimmune disease. So there you got the midsection with the fear and flight engaged. And what happens is that frontal part disengages. Some people who are in this state, they stop functioning. And so that's what it was talking about with the business people that I talked about before that have this toxic boss. They're in there recovering. The part of their brain has physically shut down. They're in a fog, okay? So there's skills to being able to get out of that, but once you understand it, it really helps you to understand what's happening in you and what you need to do. That it's not just a defect in you, right?
Yeah.
Is very helpful. This is seen often in MS, rheumatoid arthritis, Graves' disease, and fibromyalgia. Toxic people can trigger these in those most susceptible. Short-term and long-term stress enhance immunity, while major league chronic stress may enhance immunity for a brief moment, this is the interesting thing, before plummeting below baseline, suppressing the immune system. So then you first have this situation where it's hyper, involved with anxiety, and then it plummets into a depression, okay? This is why most people get sick after the stress is over, after the finals are over.
Yes.
You are aware of.
Oh, yes.
Okay. If chronic stress happens enough times, the thymus gland becomes a fourth of its size. And this is, I was shocked.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Dr. Sapolsky said this happens with just minor things. It kind of shrinks a little bit.
Wow, really? Okay.
Which has a big effect on destroying future immune responses because of consistent dumping of glucocorticoids, and we're going to talk about that a lot, which has been shown to suppress and kill some cells of the immune system. So first, it suppresses the immune system. And if you want to look into the mechanics of why it does that, you can do that on your own. We don't have time here. But, and then if it's done enough, it starts to kill the immune system, then you get an autoimmune system disorder that you don't know is related to the toxic person, right? You just think my body has a problem. While toxic people and chronic stress are not linked with cancer, it is important to understand that research shows that most individuals fighting cancer need a support group to inspire them to keep taking their horrible medications in order to survive. This is a big problem. Now, people thought that the support groups, Dr. Sapolsky talks about how people in the research field thought that it was just from being in the support group. But what they found out is that when you're in the support group, and you're saying, I don't want to take my medication anymore. This is horrible. I am tired of being sick. I'm tired of being tired. Some of these people have been in, several rounds. They're ready to give up.
Yeah.
And in that support group, they go, I will take my pills if you take your pills. I will do this if you do this. Let's do it together. Let's go eat lunch after this meeting, and we're going to do it. Okay? And that's how they get through. So it wasn't necessarily the support group. It was continuing to take your medication, which the support group was a part of. So how does this apply? Toxic people have a tendency to cut off their victims from other people, including support groups. Since higher rates of death from cancer are associated with isolation and lack of support, in fact, any illnesses, it is likely that a person diagnosed with cancer or a severe illness who is consistently isolated by toxic caregivers will be less likely to survive.
It's incredible.
Just as the hormones involved in chronic stress destroy the functioning of the body, they also destroy functioning in the brain. So a lot of disorders that you think are, you think it's just all in their mind, it actually is, which is kind of funny. But it's not it's not like something's wrong with their soul. It's something that is happening in the mechanisms of the brain.
On a biological level.
It's a biological thing, right? Mechanisms in the brain that help people to cope with and recover from grief and sorrow begin to malfunction from too much emotional dumping and brain shrinkage, keeping the victim in a clinically depressive state that cripples them. Toxic people equals emotional and mental abuse, equals stress hormones raised, glucocorticoids, equals shrunken hippocampus and lower norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin levels. Those are the happy drugs, okay, that our body makes for us. Which equals lack of emotional control, anhedonia, rumination, and loss of energy. Okay? People who have had a major stressful event are now statistically more likely to fall into a depression and then recover. This is normal. With a second and third major emotional trauma, and again, they go into depression and recover. Fourth and fifth time, however, and their brain starts to cycle into depression separate from the stressor and trauma. It's now set up a pattern. They then start to plummet into physiological disorders and clinical depression. Toxic people need to be aware that they may be dealing negatively with someone who is one step away from their fourth or fifth emotional breakdown if not treated respectfully. Since people can be emotionally repressive type personalities, it can be difficult to tell who is susceptible. Okay, so there are people like Spock. Okay, they have flat affect. They're just kind of, they're kind of mild in the way that they act. So you would think that it wasn't affecting these people, right?
Right.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Consistently sustained stress equals sustained exposure to glucocorticoids. I'm going to get this into your brain so you understand. Okay, equals destroys physical and mental health. It is important to have outlets, control over part of your life, predictability, a perception that things will get better, and some social support in order to have a break from the consistent flow of glucocorticoids from stressors that are from toxic people. These behaviors help victims of abuse to combat the biological damage being done to the brain and body by toxic people. They don't just make you feel good, you're dumping dopamine back in, serotonin back in. These things are going to help you sleep better. You're going to have more energy with epinephrine. You're going to have those highs more often if you keep doing this, and so you won't get damage as much. The behavior of toxic people can also damage and shrink the brain, including gray matter and the amygdala, in a way so that there is no fear, no anxiety, and no protection.
Wow.
Pretty interesting. Depends on the person, your personality, different things, how it affects you.
Yeah.
So this guy's over like a huge valley, just kind of hanging out, and he's resting from walking across a tightrope.
Wow.
Yeah. Thankfully, he has a rope because I'd be freaking out.
I see that.
I don't think I would have put it up here because your anxiety level would have gone up, right?
Yeah.
This guy's making a jump just above a cliff.
Wow.
Okay. So there are types of personalities that thrive like this. They have been known to have lower dopamine levels. It takes more to get that dopamine high.
Wow.
So they're willing to do whatever it takes to get that dopamine high.
Wow.
So this can also happen with people who have it damaged in them.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional abuse can also enlarge the amygdala, leading to anxiety and bipolar disorder, with those susceptible to schizophrenia being even more at risk of a psychotic break from toxic people. People with this picture, I almost didn't put this in, but that is exactly what a person with anxiety often can look like.
Yes.
Okay? People with anxiety become endlessly vigilant to perceived stressors and can't recognize the safety signals. They don't know when the stressor is over, or they ruminate on what happens, might happen, or will happen. But does it help to ruminate on it?
No.
No. People with PTSD have enlarged amygdalas. The more sustained or multiple emotional traumas from toxic people mixed with a genetic susceptibility, the more likely the victim is to have psychological disorders. Now, I watched a family member my whole life with this problem. It went undiagnosed, and other issues with this person. Ruminated. It destroyed their life. Just ruminated on the anger, on all the frustration of being treated badly or whatever. And they were justified, but it destroyed them because they couldn't let go.
Right.
This ruminating process seemed to be a pattern in members of my family. And so I know firsthand that the steps that I'm going to give you and that I've already given you to being knowing what is going on in your body and saying, okay, I have to get to a happier place here.
Yeah.
To not let this damage my body anymore, because I had a tumor in my system, my body, that had to be removed, gastrointestinal system, and that kind of woke me up to the fact that I was holding too much in. I needed to start setting boundaries and making steps.
Absolutely.
So you might have a physical ailment that you don't realize is part of that, but it is. Research has shown that those who don't seem to be bothered emotionally by the emotional trauma of toxic people are actually repressing their feelings. Remember Spock?
Right, yeah.
While they show no signs of anxiety and depression, blood tests show their glucocorticoid levels to be through the roof.
Wow, that's incredible.
So in what I'm going to email to you, you can take a closer look at the system and maybe get an understanding. Because some people, once they have an understanding for what's happening, they take the steps.
Right.
To fix it. And they also stop doing it to people because they understand that they're killing somebody that they love or a worker that they need, right? Repressive personalities squeeze off their psyche so they don't feel the emotional pain from toxic people's treatment. The prefrontal cortex is working diligently above normal to block the pain, which elevates the levels of glucocorticoids in the bloodstream. This damages other areas of the body that may not seem connected to emotional trauma from toxic people, but which definitely is. So if you take a closer look at this picture, you'll see there's a part of the prefrontal. Most people say the emotional part is in the center of the brain, the limbic system, but it's tied to this portion of the prefrontal cortex. And certain personalities are able to squeeze it off. People have learned to. People in the military, men are more apt and able to do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you have certain personalities that instead of realizing that there's any wrong, because there's no symptoms, there's no emotional symptoms showing up, they're not going out to do these things that are helping them to lower their glucocorticoid levels.
Right.
So it's through the roof. Repressive personalities then start to suffer from diseases and ailments they have no idea were caused by their brain's way of dealing with emotional stress and trauma. Cushing's syndrome, weight gain, higher vulnerability to infection, brain atrophy in areas, along with all the previously stated physical disorders from high glucocorticoid levels begin to show up. Dr. Sternberg has stated that during periods of increased and sustained stress, the immune system cells are being bathed in molecules which are essentially telling them to stop fighting. The long-term constant cortisol exposure associated with chronic stress creates a heightened vulnerability to viral infections, impaired cognition, decreased thyroid function, endocrine problems, and decreased cardiovascular health. So what it does is it shuts off these T cells. It can actually damage the system that creates T cells too, from what I remember. The goal is to have some stress that stimulates us. A moderate stressor like a roller coaster can be exciting, and transient stressors like doing all the work to get that degree, which Shuri knows.
Yeah.
Those stressors offer us a challenge when they are in a safe and benevolent environment.
That's very true. Yes.
As soon as stress becomes chronic and extreme in a non-safe and non-benevolent environment with toxic people, that is when the damage begins. Symptoms of physical illness, clinical depression, and anxiety show up in different ways and interfere with a person's ability to take care of the tasks they are in charge of, which then makes the toxic person angry, which increases the toxic behavior. See, it just gets worse and worse, which means that you're going to have more and more incidents of it. Then you get to that fourth and fifth stressor, and your body just plummets.
Yeah.
Okay? You get psychological disorders, everything. Toxic people are usually unaware of how they get in their own way as managers and leaders, parents and teachers, by destroying the long-term physical, mental, and emotional health of those around them, especially in those with susceptibility. Think of it as toxic people being the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
The good news, there's good news in all of this. Okay. The good news is that many of these symptoms and disorders can be reversed when the victim is removed from the emotionally toxic environment before severe damage is done. As long as there continues to be intermittent and moderate levels of stress and challenge in order to sustain levels of certain neurochemicals. This is the interesting part. You need certain amounts of that to keep being happy. Okay, you can't just relax all the time.
Right.
I wish. A certain amount of struggle means greater amounts of dopamine highs when someone overcomes or finishes a struggle. It is harder to get emotional reward when things are too easy.
That's very true.
So that child, that deadbeat child that you're not, creating a little bit of fire under.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reward system you could use.
And then increase your own dopamine levels at the same
time. Exactly. Exactly. I would suggest trying to find non-toxic ways of dealing with them. Find creative ways, humorous ways even. I've used them. I have one child who showed signs of oppositional defiant disorder beyond the norm. I'm sure parents can relate. When he was a child, it wasn't horrible, but it was frustrating. And in a simple way, it showed up when he was little and got, it increased. But this is kind of a cute story where he would constantly take off his shoes, hated shoes. A lot of parents have had children like this.
Yes, I have.
Cried when he got new shoes because they were still too tight.
Oh yeah.
I promise they'll loosen up. And so he's this toddler. I have 4 other kids in the car because I was a daycare provider at the time. We're going to several places. Every single time I go to open up the door, his shoes are on the ground. I've got tons of kids trying to get him back before nap time. I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
His shoes keep ending up on the floor, and he just looks at me and laughs. Every single time.
Stinker.
I'm like, please, will you please keep your shoes on? So I have to keep putting them back on, going into the store, coming back out, and then go to the next place. So I'm like, okay, this obviously isn't working. It's starting to work. It's starting to work. This is what toxic people should be learning. This isn't working. I need to try something else. And so I open up the door, shoes are on the ground, I just look at him, and he's got that grin on his face. And I said, those shoes are in timeout. Those shoes are naughty. And he busted up laughing. He was only like 2.5, 3, okay?
Wow. Yeah.
Busted up laughing. And so I put the shoes on, he's cracking up, never did it again. Never.
That's great.
So
there
figured
him out.
Figure it out. There's something you're given this challenge to figure out something that works or a new skill. I had never tried doing that before. That was a new skill I learned, and through the years I've learned to use humor with this kid. Okay. If you have no choice but to endure being around toxic people, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Or a toxic boss, You need to do things that give you an emotional high or joy in order to combat the effects and heal your body when you're away from them. Mm-hmm. I would say choose to ruminate on it for only a little bit if you have that problem.
Yeah.
If it's not solving the problem, you're not coming up with solutions, get up and do something else. Mm-hmm. Now that you understand what it's doing to your body and what your negative attitude is then doing to maybe your fetus, mm-hmm. to other people around you, you need to get up and do something else. Things to help are feel-good movies, feel-good music that gives you that high. Getting the chills, when you get the chills about something, even at church, something spiritual, that's dopamine dumping into your body. There's chemical reactions in that, okay? And it's healing your body. Good books, hiking. I would not suggest self-help books at this time.
Fun books.
Yeah, okay. And walks, exercise, time with friends, and Disneyland, all right? All dump dopamine and other important neurochemicals back into your brain and into your body, your bloodstream. Mm-hmm. Make sure you don't ruminate on what they do to you and don't let their behavior eat away at you when you're not around them. By doing more of what you enjoy, you help your body to heal from what you've been through or are going through, I'm sorry to say. Mm-hmm. It will help you to neurologically combat life stressors in dealing with toxic people. Mm-hmm. Toxic people in groups, teams, and organizations. Now, hopefully, your work site is not like this. I love the guy's face on it. All right. Often, it is not the leader that is the toxic person, but a subordinate who wreaks havoc on the group or other individuals in an organization. Mm-hmm. Meetings can be a breeding ground for toxic behavior, especially if the leader or manager is not assertive enough to set boundaries on the bullies and narcissists in the group. They may not be able to see the toxic patterns happening around them. Like, remember when I sat back, mm-hmm. she was totally unaware. Well, the reason why I knew and could understand the pattern that was going, kind of sit back and notice it myself, was because years earlier, I had a friend, Jennifer Nordstrom, who came to me about a situation that was happening with, I was the president of an organization. They were both my assistants. And she came to me about, very calmly, it's a really good example of that, mm-hmm. and calmly stated to me, did you notice how this is happening in the meeting? Mm. And, she was very good at kind of observing people.
That's awesome,
right?
Yeah.
In the process, I helped her to learn how to, because she was good at observing, but not mm-hmm. knowing
what to do.
The steps to take with this. Yeah. So I kind of helped her and supported her in that with some relationships. Okay. So we helped each other. And so she helped me to kind of step back and go, okay, wait a minute, I'm not paying attention to how she's getting shut down.
Right.
And she's getting shut down. I realize she's getting shut down over things that she's over.
Yeah.
And the other person isn't even over, right? And so I finally, in the next meeting, when the person did, I'm like, okay, well, this is Jen's area. Uh-huh. So if you have ideas that might help her with the ideas that she has, that would be great.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then likewise, did the same with her.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of coaxed other people to give her ideas and
mm-hmm.
for her to be able to do that herself, to accept ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. You're becoming a parent when you're a leader.
Yeah.
Seeing the toxic member in the group. There are power grabs and attention seeking between subordinates. Mm-hmm. You need to pay attention to that. They might be subtle. It is important, and that's why I put that picture, mm-hmm. Because look at her face. I remember often seeing that look on people's face. They don't come out and say it, but they go, I can't believe that person just said that.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I can totally see her saying.
Did you just say that?
Right.
Yeah.
It is important for the leaders of the groups to see themselves in a parental role over siblings, coworkers who are constantly vying for attention, consuming all attention, shutting down others, taking over others, talking over others, maybe taking them over too, dismissing others' ideas, mocking others, humiliating them, blaming others, talking down to others in a patronizing tone, competing and slamming others in a way that is funny in order to escape blame for saying cruel and humiliating, inappropriate things.
Right.
Okay. So parent, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, those are things you have to deal with and look for also.
Mm-hmm.
One way of seeing these patterns is by being objective and seeing the meeting from a bird's eye view instead of being in the thick of it on the ground in this subjective place.
Mm-hmm.
Many call this getting up on the balcony instead of being on the dance floor. You are looking for the sharks in the tank who are picking off other valuable fish.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
They often veil their efforts as being helpful or their comments funny.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit back and take a look at who is contributing and who is not, pay attention to find out why. Maybe even ask the quiet ones about it in private. You most likely will get insight into how others in the group have been controlling the flow of communication and attention.
Mm-hmm.
Do one-on-ones with people.
Mm-hmm.
It is the leader's job to protect those employees who are not being heard or are being shot down and humiliated by aggressive and narcissistic people within the group. Mm-hmm. Often because they are not as articulate. The insight from introverted and sensitive employees is incredibly valuable. I have found it to be so. Mm-hmm. They will protect themselves and their ideas if they do not feel safe enough to share them. Until given a safe place to learn how to express themselves, their skills for sharing their ideas in public will remain low. Mm-hmm. It is important to teach group members to be patient with what other people are sharing in a group, as well as strengthening their understanding that even if their ideas aren't used, every idea has the capacity to lead the group toward an idea that does work. Now, Cherie and I have worked together in
mm-hmm.
a public affairs council, and I tried really hard to make it so that everybody was equal. I was just there to metabolize the information and get it out, and I wasn't better than anybody, and we're going to discuss that a little bit here. This is how you open this up for shared ideas, mm-hmm. because everybody is valued for their expertise, and there's no one-upmanship.
Right. What I feel worked really well when you were the director was that you acted as the hub, and you let us all have kind of our own thing. Leader
over your own part.
Yeah, leader over our own part, and you would give us a task to do, but we could come to you. We felt safe enough to come to you and
Good.
say,
Thank
"Hey,
you.
I want to do it this way," and you're
Right.
great. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Let's see how that works, and that definitely really helped.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad.
Mm-hmm.
This is called a think tank. It is important to hire leaders who know how to create a think tank instead of a shark tank, mm-hmm. which means they know how to diplomatically set boundaries on aggressive people while also being able to protect and coax expression out of those who are more passive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Often those are your leaders. They're not in leader positions, but they're change agents, mm-hmm. and they need to be protected. Think tanks are collaborative in nature. They should be emotionally and mentally safe, yet challenging. People aren't allowed to disagree with, mock, or talk down to one another. Instead, they are asked to challenge others with hard questions and concerns to get everyone to see the pros and cons of an idea. This will be difficult for people who are like, I disagree. I mean, you can't, or you didn't hear me. These are words that shut down communication and blame the other person, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to come up with a question to get that person that you disagree with to understand why it might not be a good idea. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then in the other way too, if you're supporting somebody else's idea and disagreeing with somebody, instead of going, well, I totally agree with her,
Yeah.
you say, well, I think this is a good idea because of...
Right. Explain
right?
your reasoning, not that you're siding with somebody.
Right. You're trying to get the other person to understand.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful in meetings to make sure that people in the group are not being humiliated, dismissed, or shunned by control freaks, buzz killers, and attention-grabbing ringleaders. Mm-hmm. Members of the group should also be encouraged to add onto or subtract parts from one another's ideas to tweak them a bit in order to get the best idea or consensus if needed. This way it's not all about you
right.
or that person, it's about the idea and the organization and making it function after we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Top-down leadership should only be used when someone new is being trained and needs micromanagement. That micromanagement should then be incrementally removed as the person begins to become competent. When leading a group with competent individuals in their fields, top-down leadership becomes dysfunctional and toxic as it creates resistance and disrespects the autonomy and competence of the individuals involved.
Mm-hmm.
When you lead a group of professionals in their field, you are not above them. You are in the middle of them.
Mm-hmm.
You are at the hub of the center of the web of information and resources that flow in and out from each member of the group. You are not there to be better than or know more than them, than the other participants in their respective fields. Your job is to be expert at organizing their efforts and expertise for mobilization. So you see here, this is like, you get the web thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the hub, that's a computer hub, and see how
Yeah.
everybody's connected in,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So if you took out one of those, something's missing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You take the hub away, something's missing, they can't connect together.
Right.
You're not greater than, you are part of.
Yeah, I like that.
Of course, leaders can know more than others in the group and have a skill set above the rest, but it is not to be held over their heads. That knowledge is to be shared with them just as their knowledge is to be shared with you and the others. It is a shared experience that will enhance the group's collaboration and networking ability while also respecting their autonomy and valuing their individual expertise. One-upmanship, power trips, humiliation, and aggression will destroy any chance at such an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Before some people can work with others, they may need to gain certain skills in managing their tempers, either as an initiator of emotional aggression behavior or as someone who retaliates easily in response to instigators. This is an anger management issue. Anger management stresses the need to become emotionally intelligent. Now, I would suggest looking that up and finding out what it is, taking a test in it. Even if you aren't born with this ability, because certain individuals are, you can learn it. Some people have it naturally, others need to learn it, and some can't. Some companies fire them on the spot with a no tolerance for emotional and mental abuse. They need to set a standard.
Yeah.
The people who can't, they have prefrontal lobe disorders usually.
Oh, okay.
You don't seem to be happy here. Where do you think you would be happy? This is a really good response when dealing with somebody who's not functioning properly in an area. I learned this from a manager, not in talking to me, but when I asked them how they dealt with somebody who was a toxic employee, instead of getting on their case and you aren't doing well here, they just brought them in and asked this question, and it just disarmed them. And yeah, I probably would be happy somewhere else, or maybe in a different department here.
Nice.
It's not working for me in this group. Well, why do you think that is?
Mm-hmm.
And try to ask them questions for them to figure out. You might know it. Help them to figure it out with
Right.
their own cognition. The interesting thing about toxic overreactors is that their hostility also endangers their health with a high risk for cardiovascular disease, heart disease, high cholesterol, and being overweight. Their time-pressured, impatient, low self-esteem, and people skills, joyless striving, angry type A personalities are not just raising everyone else's blood pressure.
Right.
Was that enough adjectives for you?
Yeah.
People with anger management issues and intermittent explosive disorder are like this person who walks in with a slow-leaking nuclear bomb strapped to their chest. Explosive overreactors are literally killing themselves and those around them, one toxic moment at a time. When not put in check, they destroy individuals, homes, organizations, and nations. Just take a look at all the dictators that we have in the world
That's right.
who take over nations, who have a system of obedience no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That is a problem. You need to have groups where people challenge each other a little bit, respectfully, of course, and people ask questions. It needs to be allowed. Number one anger management tool for you. There will always be problems to solve, people to teach, or things to fix. A lot of times this just helps people to understand, okay, I just need to accept this.
Right.
And it helps them to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you solve one problem, there will always be others that pop up.
That's
Okay?
right.
Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything in which it is poured. By Mark Twain, wise man.
Yes.
You will be able to gain more patience if you get rid of the expectation that life should be easier for you. Once you understand that life is and always will be a series of problems to solve, people to teach, and things to fix, you will be able to find more peace.
And I think that's very difficult for people. You know, I'm one of them as well.
You kind of choke it down.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I just got through this last problem. Why do I have another one? And it seems like it's constantly at your door, but it's true if you think of it this way. You know, it does make it a little bit easier to swallow.
It does.
It's true.
It does, and it'll grow on you.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of just start to, you know, okay, I'm supposed to learn a new skill or ability, I guess.
Well, and it goes back to what you were saying also, you know, the predictability. You can pretty much predict that you're going to have another problem around the corner that you need to solve.
One that might not be your problem, not your problem, but your fault.
Yeah.
Might not be your fault.
Right.
There's a book that I sell that I wrote. It's at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I also sell it individually on my website at emotionalethics.com. And this book helps people to overcome that by setting boundaries and learning how to not ruminate on things, and also just kind of let go of the fact that you're going through difficulties to learn compassion. But there's no other way to learn how to create a connection with other people.
Right.
Who are the people that you mostly connect with? People that you've gone through trauma, the same trauma with,
Yeah.
or similar trauma. Okay, and you find joy in what? Being able to help them.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, there's a reason for these things. There is hope for toxic people. No, I know it's interesting to see baboons here. Again, Robert Sapolsky. He's done research in Africa for years over these baboons and figured out that there was this one set of baboons that was extremely more toxic to each other than to you know, like other animals. They were in a safe area where they didn't have any real predators. And so they started just like teasing each other, even like the little kids, you know, and just kind of like here, battling each other within their own culture.
Right.
And the wives would have to protect the children from them. It got really bad until one day, all the toxic, aggressive ones died because they were getting all their food from a food heap, like a trash heap.
Oh, okay.
And they were always on that, protecting it, you know. And so they got sick from something in the food heap. And not that I'm suggesting that
Kill off the
kill off all the
aggressors.
aggressors and the toxic people. That is not the point of what I'm saying here. Okay, so what happened afterwards is the interesting part. So you have a lot of the smaller males that are now in charge. You have larger females. The larger females start actually pushing them away and training them how to act.
Oh, okay.
You know, you're not going to get away with this,
Yeah,
right? You're not going to beat up on the little guy. No.
Yeah.
So they started to create this culture where they said no. They set boundaries with them, and they didn't do it. So this became the safest of the baboon tribes. And the interesting thing is when other males would be sent out of their tribe because they got beat up by the aggressor and they got to go mope and try to find another tribe and they got to be an underling. So they come into this group and again, the mothers and the older now male baboons, no, not going to do that. They didn't aggress on them. They just slowly just kept pushing them away. You know, just slight things, setting boundaries with them. And they became this culture that was very safe.
Nice.
I thought that was very interesting.
That is.
And these things can be applied to humans. I've seen it happen. The tips that I've talked about in the other parts of this lecture have worked.
That's great.
That's the greatest part.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you have set up, you've done all these things to set up an organization or environment that has become healthy. Let's say you had a toxic relationship or a toxic person, somehow they learned through this information or something you've done, well, it takes time for them to take on, just as it takes time for you to set the boundaries and consistently do it when it pops up, they have to have patience in, changing. So, but you need to be vigilant. Be vigilant in keeping your borders and boundaries protected, especially in the first few months. It takes at least a month to change one habit, can take up to 3 months. It will be incredibly uncomfortable, okay? Especially for them. They are used to getting their way or getting a high from controlling and manipulating you. Try to move the toxic person from needing command to stop being toxic to private requests, remember the please requests, and then private questions to get them to introspect. Be patient with yourself as you practice these new tactics and strategies. Don't beat yourself up, although I know you will. Practice what you say next time in your head. A good tactic is they call it the chair in Gestalt psychology. You put this chair down, that person's in the chair. You say to them what you didn't say. And it might be toxic at first. And then you try to find a diplomatic way. You're like, that probably wouldn't work. So you practice with this invisible person in the chair. Okay, and you can do that, or you journal about it. Oh, I should have said this. Next time I'm going to be ready to say this. It takes time.
Yeah, I do that a lot. It looks like I'm talking to myself.
It's okay. It's only bad when someone catches you.
Yeah. But now we have the day and age with the earbud thing.
Oh, yeah,
so you
people
can just gotta
So there's a note. You can be doing this in your car and people think you are talking to the overhead.
Yeah.
Okay. Or go back and discuss what happened and remind them of the rules afterwards. If they are showing improvement, be patient with them, but up to a point. If they step over or have stepped over the legal line, it is time to walk away. Remain calm yet firm when needed. Okay, this is kind of a fun way for you to remember how you need to be, the tone you need to take, because they will always see your overreaction before they see theirs that started it.
Right.
Okay, it's just the way they're set up. They're not like you.
Yeah.
Okay, especially if you're a people pleaser or somebody who's very diplomatic and has high emotional intelligence. So the ICBM's Patriot Missile Effect. So basically, this is the thing that Ronald Reagan set up with the military, so that if a missile from, that big fear, which was a real fear, Russia sends a nuclear bomb, we send a nuclear bomb, everybody's dead, right? So that's toxic behavior at its most highest level. And instead, he created this system, which is almost like his personality. Is very good at disarming people, and obviously with his relationship with Russia. And so these missiles were sent up, or were tested to be sent up, that they would attack the missile before it reached us.
Oh,
okay?
I see, yeah.
So instead of attacking back, they attacked the problem. Instead of attacking the person, you're attacking the problem, the tone.
So no one's
remember
dead.
that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The air just has a nice firework in it, right? All right. Yeah. So, but nuclear, you don't want the waste from that. But
No.
What I'm saying is you need to learn the steps to disarm. You shouldn't have to do this all the time with people. You shouldn't have to be the person who consistently has to do this with somebody. Unless you're making a deal with somebody, you're trying to get a contract done, fine. Use all the skills you want. For peace treaties, whatever. But on a consistent basis, you shouldn't have to be consistently juggling again to make the relationship work. They should be coming at you with respect.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay?
Yeah.
So Star Wars, here's a fun way to remember how not to be. So Princess Leia, kind of snotty, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be like that.
No.
Okay. As fun as it looks,
Yeah.
right? Luke, he's kind of a whiner. You don't want to be a whiner.
No.
It's not going to work, okay? Then you have Han Solo, kind of a jerk sometimes. You don't want to be a jerk,
No.
all right? You want to be like Obi-Wan,
All right. Yeah.
calm, assured, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Just kidding. All right, so
These are not the droids you're looking for.
but he was very, even when he talked with Darth Vader, he just calm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you will not succeed, things like that. Just very calm assurance, and that's what will help you to probably remember. It's kind of a fun way to do it.
Yeah, I like that.
Also, another way is if you've seen Matrix, the movie, Morpheus.
Right.
And he's assertive without being aggressive,
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'd mess with him.
No.
Okay. Consistency. Emotionally and mentally toxic people can't handle your personal strengths, goals, and boundaries, or they can't even see them. Don't address what they can't handle or see, trying to prove your worth to them or lash out at them. Just address the tone. I can't say this enough to people.
Yeah.
Don't talk down to me. I will talk to you when you can talk to me respectfully to me. Don't dismiss me. Don't embarrass me in public. That's a big one. And we probably should have talked about that more. Humiliation is a big factor.
Absolutely.
And you might have to say these things in public in front of other people, because if you go to them later, I didn't do that.
Right. Absolutely. Call them on it when they're doing it.
And it's going to be uncomfortable, right? Somebody once, you know, I had purchased something in front of everybody, said, well, how much did that cost?
Oh, I hate that one.
I immediately, and before you're like, you know, and I immediately just said, you know what, that's pretty inappropriate. We can talk about that later if you want.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
And don't give them what they want to appease them, and don't let them trick you into laughing it off when your feelings are hurt. Okay? Don't.
Absolutely.
If it's wrong, I mean, maybe you are sensitive and you need to work on it, but you know the difference between cruelty and just teasing, okay?
You need to really trust yourself.
Yeah, trusting that intuition and things like that. And maybe you are sensitive and it's not a good fit. Find safer people to be around for you. Give them boundaries, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and sexually in some cases, right? For being untrustworthy and unloving in the ways you needed love and trust. Okay, we're almost ready to wrap up here, but this story of Dennis, this is a true story. This kid had some behavioral problems, was in a facility, and he was labeled with this problem. And a lot of people I hear from when I first start talking about dealing with toxic people, oh, you can't change them, and all these things. You have to change yourself. And a lot of times people, when they hear you have to change yourself, they hear, especially if they're a battered person, they hear, you mean I have to change and do what they say to make it work?
Right, yeah.
Okay, that's not what they mean when they say you need to change what you're doing.
Yeah.
It means you need to set boundaries.
Right.
And and not allow it anymore.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and find leverage somehow to stop it. So this situation is a good story about that. So this kid is labeled with this, you know, these kids, they won't change. So this new person comes in, and he doesn't know all the stories. He doesn't really know everything about it. He's I think a psychologist. And he comes in and he starts playing football with the kid. Okay, just passing the ball with him. He enjoys doing it. Gets really excited every day or week when he comes in to do it. And then all of a sudden he starts talking really bad. Oh, that was a stupid catch. You know, just starts saying really negative things to him. And he just immediately says to him, you know what, if you're going to talk to me like this, we're not going to play football anymore.
That's good.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I won't do it anymore. Amazing.
Yeah.
Changed. This kid changed.
Yeah.
Because somebody had leverage. That means you have to create a relationship with something that is valuable to them. And it's not to manipulate them in order to get what you want out of them. It's in order to get the abuse to stop. There is nothing wrong with that, with setting boundaries and trying to get leverage so that you aren't being treated badly anymore. It's your intention. If your intention is to hurt them in return, I will say that is wrong.
Yeah,
but if your intention is to protect yourself and others, then go for it. Find that leverage and use it.
That's good.
Okay, so this is what helps people. You're going to get this in the mail, in your email. It's going to be at the end of the material. is the Personal Declaration of Independence and Bill of Rights. So what I've gone in and done is I've gone in.
Nice, I like that.
Thank you. I've gone in and changed the wording for you. So you understand, this document is amazing. It's not just for nations. I don't think Thomas Jefferson meant it for just nations. He meant it for the people of this nation individually.
Yeah.
And so this changes all the wording so that it's talking about you and how much you put up with. You make a list of those things. And if you agree with this document and you make that list, you're ready to walk away guilt-free. Okay? It's very helpful.
That's incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
It really has released a lot of people from feeling guilt.
Good.
Whether you choose to break free from toxic people partially or completely, it is important to also break free from ruminating on them mentally and emotionally in order to become completely free. To love others as ourselves, we must first be willing to love ourselves. This means protecting ourselves from emotionally and mentally abusive and harassing people, and realizing that we do not deserve it, no matter how imperfect we are. If you struggle with the fear of setting boundaries with toxic people and aren't comfortable with making others feel uncomfortable by letting them experience loss when they are disrespectful and cruel, think of it this way. The only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
That's so true.
It is very important to understand that in Germany, 2 world wars came out of that, right? When psychologists went back in to find out why, it was because they had created a culture of think tank where nobody was, you obeyed your leader, you obeyed your parents, you obeyed, or you were hit, right? You were treated very badly and shunned. So when you have a system set up like that, you are going to have dictators start taking over your life and your world, okay? Are you really helping them by allowing them to continue their behavior without consequence? Has what you've been doing, being passive to escape worse abuse, humiliation, slander, or abandonment, helped them to become a kinder person?
That's a good point.
I have found that by sacrificing my comfort to help someone to stop hurting, abusing, and using myself or others, they have become better human beings. Saying no to, disagreeing with, and walking away from toxic people has always been uncomfortable, even painful at times, but it has always worked. Follow your intuition and your perception, not your fears and worries. Give yourself permission to immediately walk away from anything that gives you bad vibes. There is no need to explain or make sense of it. Just trust that little inner voice when it talks to you, or what you're seeing with your own eyes. If you have any questions, you can go to emotionalethics.com and look at the material I have there. My book is online there, and I would love to be able to talk with you after this. Each person who has purchased this, you are able to call me up and for 30 minutes to an hour, how much time you need, I will talk to you about coaching you or even assessing the situations that you're in. All right, thank you very much.